Hey, how you doing out there? This is Rapping Sports with Jax from the J to the A to the X to the X.com. Go over to the website, and we're going to talk about the New Jersey Devils. It looks like we might have a hockey season. They're talking around January 13th, so we'll see. We don't see no schedules. We see a little bit of the division starting to come out. They're still kind of arguing over it, but the Devils are going to be in a tough division. I mean, you have your rivals, the Rangers, Islanders, Flyers, and Penguins are still going to be there. Now you're going to add the Bruins and Buffalo in the conference, so it's going to be a pretty tough conference. But it's going to make the Devils a better team if you can beat, and whoever comes out of this division would clearly probably have a decisive edge just for playing better and tougher games and better competition throughout the year. But my goal here as a Devil fan is not to go through the rebuilding crap because I don't want to rebuild. I want to make the playoffs. It's a way to figure out how the Devils can make the playoffs and can they make the playoffs this year, not 2 years from now. And I think there's always a way. I mean, even last year, before the disaster in the beginning part of the year, a lot of people thought when the Devils made the trade and changes when they got Hughes, of course, for the pick, and they added Simmons and Gusev and Subban that they were playoff bound. And it didn't work. They had such a bad start that they couldn't recover from. And they thought Taylor Hall was going to come back and have a stellar year off a contract here. That didn't pan out. So what's so different about it this year? Now, some of them you still have Subban. So I'm looking for a good year out of him. He basically contract year wise he has to. I know he has a contract for this year and next year. But if he ever wants another big contract, he's got to put up some numbers. And I'm not saying he has to put up the numbers that he did when he first came out in the league, but he has to do better than what he did last year. So he has to give me something in between his worst and his best, and we'll see what happens there. Plus, he's going to have a new line mate with him, maybe with Murray, which is steady when he plays, if he plays, because he gets injured a lot. But he seems to have things straightened out with his doctor because I guess most of his problems were back problems. And he's saying that he believes he's going to be able to play more games this year. So we'll see. It would be nice because he is an upgrade for the Devils D, which we'll talk about that at some point. So if you go by that, you want it, and you replace the same ways. The whole key to the Devils are they still have the cap space. They still have to sign Bratt and Blackwood. I'm assuming that at some point they're going to do that, which will probably leave them somewhere in between around $9 million in extra cap space, somewhere in between $9 and $7 million after you sign them. So that's quite a bit of cap space, and you could use that for a nice trade down the stretch, or a player that somebody needs to move because there's a lot of teams that are cash strapped. But you're pretty much going to have to wait till about the last week before the season starts, which apparently is only about 3 or 4 weeks away now. So that's going to be interesting to see what they do with that. But the main thing the Devils had to do this year is improve their defense and find line mates for Jack Hughes. Those were the two absolute main things they had to do. And the Jack Hughes one was the most important. You have to find the man some line mates. And there's so many ways you can go with that. Now, the first line is probably going to be, if there's no trades, because just think, they haven't signed Palmieri to a long-term deal, and Gusev is looking for a long-term deal. So these guys are scheduled to play this year, but beyond that, you don't really know. So you don't know if they're a potential trade for the both of them. But I'm assuming Palmieri is going to want to stay. I really think he wants to stay, so it's just a matter of the money when it comes. That's what it comes down to. So you'll probably have Hischier and Palmieri together. That's almost automatic. So pretty much whoever you put on the first line with them, you should be okay. Probably it'll be Janssen that they just got in the trade from Toronto. That's a nice little move. That's a nice little upgrade because you can put him. You can even put him with Hughes on the second line. But I think he'll go up on the first line. And if Nasreddine was still coaching, I think Nasreddine would have a certain. They would have this. They had the Zajac, Gusev, and Bratt together. I think they would still keep that, even though he's still on the staff. You don't know if Ruff is going to do that. He wasn't here last year, so you have to find out. So I'm gonna say Johansson will be on the first line. Now Jack Hughes, technically as of now, they haven't found the players for him yet. And I'm hoping they're thinking that maybe Nolan Foote can be one of his wingers. He'll add some size. The guy looks like he's skilled. And it looks like he can play. And if you put him with Jack Hughes, you have two young guys that can form a line for a long time. So that would be a nice start right there. Devils have tons of prospects. I mean, it's unbelievable the choice amount of prospects, and they have them at every position now. They have a couple of defensemen, a couple of wingers, maybe goaltending they can build up, but they're just starting with Blackwood, and you add Crawford. So I think you upgraded in goaltending this year, so you're going to be a lot better with that. And they'll probably, no matter what the schedule is, there's probably going to be a lot of back-to-backs. So you're going to need two goalies. You're not going to sit there and have a goalie play all the time. So I think that's an upgrade with the wingers. So the other key is, who is that winger that's going to be with Foote? And I'm thinking the way, because I'm going by Lindy Ruff. You have to remember how he coached, and I know he likes size. Even though he had some of the good players that were smaller like LaFontaine, but for the most part, I know he likes size, so he's going to probably put Foote with Hughes. And until I see different, at least there's nobody on the roster that satisfies me now. They could put Merkley there because they sent Merkley over to play in Europe. Maybe in the beginning they'll put Merkley there, but I think it'll be the cap money person that they bring over, whoever that is, that mystery person, because the Devils have to be thinking that way, that they need to pick up. They need to take that extra cap space and find that winger to either play in that first line with Hischier or to play with Jack Hughes. But for now, I'm going to put Merkley there because Merkley was playing well, and he looks like he's a smart player and he's a hardworking player. So for now, I'll put him there. I'm not saying that's going to happen permanently. And if Nasreddine has any say, he'll have the Zajac, not Zajac, I'm sorry, Zacha, Gusev, and Bratt. That'll be their third line. They'll all play together. And they were playing well, so they'll be considered first, second, or whatever you want to call them. And then you could have Zajac, Wood, and somebody else, one of the younger guys. Now, this is the one advantage, and I'll speak about that soon. I'm going to try not to talk forever because the way the offseason happened, you could talk forever because the Devils have so many prospects. But what I'm seeing on the defensive part of the Devils they are slightly improved, okay? You still have Butcher, and Butcher's only good if you're going to use him on the power play. If you're not going to use him on the power play, trade him. If you're going to use him on the power play, then obviously you keep him. They have Carrick, Kulikov, Murray, Severson, Subban. I'm assuming Subban and Murray will play on the same line together. That's a nice little punch because Murray's a more defensive-minded person. He can pitch in offensively, and we'll see how that goes, right? Severson, and then that leaves Carrick. Carrick, even though it's still better than what it was last year, I don't see him being on that roster. And I see also Kulikov might be battling for the roster spot too, because I like to think that Ball and Ty Smith will be in this lineup. And at least if they're not in the lineup, one of them is going to be the seventh guy. The guy that comes off the bench or in off the first injury, which is what I'd like to see. At some point, you got to blend these young guys in, and you got to see what they can do. You can actually work both of them in slowly, or you can have them sit on the sideline because there's no American League to go to. As of right now, there's no league. So you're going to need the extra guys on your roster anyway, probably. So I would like to see Ball, and I would like to see Smith crack this lineup. I think Smith's going to crack the lineup, which is probably going to push Connors back. And then Kulikov is going to be battling with Ball. No doubt in my mind for the position. There could also be a trade with one of the defensemen. I mean, Severson, which has a nice contract, you can trade him. And you kind of have to watch out because there's always the trade scenario. Because even though you want to improve the defense, and just right there you have a little bit. You added Kulikov, you added Murray. Murray and Subban will go nice together. And the key is what you want to do with Butcher. Butcher's going to be on the power play, fine. And it's not that he can't play defense. He's okay. He plays decent. But he's a power play guy. And it seemed like they didn't use him properly last year. and whether he was just not playing well, combination of things, but we'll see. But if the Devils don't use that extra cap money, then you have to start playing some of these young guys somehow. You got to get them in there, and you got to learn to trust them. The one thing the Devils have, though, are a lot of prospects. And that's an advantage. That's something like years ago, Atlanta, when they switched over to Winnipeg, they were one of those teams that were 4 years out of the playoffs, haven't made it. And then what happened was when they went to Winnipeg, a lot of these prospects all came up together and they started playing well. And that's because they had so many of them. And you're going to get a certain amount of them to actually play and be ready to play. That's what you got to hope. I mean, if you have all these guys, you have Kukkonen down there. I mean, there's so many people. It's not even to mention the guys they drafted this year. There's a lot of guys that are ready to go. You have Kukkonen, you have Merkley. I'm not even, you have Foote, that I pretty much myself, in my mind, have him in a lineup. But that doesn't mean the Devils will have him in a lineup. You don't know how. I'm trying to remember. You have Tyce Thompson that is going to eventually come up. Devils have a lot of talent. Also on defense, you have Welch, smart player. He can help you out on the power play too. So the Devils have a lot of young guys, and finally they have a few defense, a few forwards that they can all move in and out. Somebody's got to pop out of this bunch. Two of the young guys, in order for the Devils to make a big improvement, actually have to start playing better. And if that happens, then you don't really have to look for the veteran at the end of the year. You don't really have to worry about spending your cap money on the D, and then you can find that line mate. And that's the most important thing. I think you're going to use Foote, and then you can spend that whatever that cap space is on that player. And that player is going to be a good player. It's going to be somebody that can't handle the cap, someone that can't handle a cap hit, and you might end up with a nice player. But it might take to like a week before the season before that all happens. So if you put the Devils in and you put the bunch that I had for defensemen, Butcher, Carrick, Kulikov, Murray, Severson, Subban, Smith, and Ball, out of that combination, it's up to Ruff every day to find out who he wants to play. But the defense, in my mind, is improved. You just got to see who's ready to go and who's not. Camp will tell us that when we get down to camp. But I believe those are the Devils, as of right now, that actually have a chance to make the lineups, and some of them are going to be battling. Blackwood and Corey Crawford are etched in stone in my mind. There's not going to be anything, unless injury comes, then you can always kind of get players later. Now, with the Devils on offense, it comes down to the question that we always have, and it's the same three players. Zacha, Wood, and McLeod. Are they ready to step up? This is like around, in the case of Wood and Zacha, this is their fourth year now, maybe even fifth year now. Time to step up. McLeod, I think he maybe 3 or 4 years, but he hasn't had much NHL experience. But time to step up. These three guys right there could be a line if you wanted to be that way. So this is an important part of the team. Are some of the younger kids sitting down waiting to come in, waiting to play? And like I said, I didn't even count our draft picks from this year. And then you got Boquist I didn't even mention. I mean, they have a lot of young guys, and some of them are due to actually play pretty well. If you can find the ones that actually are going to play pretty well, there's no way all these prospects are going to fail. You have to look at it in a positive thing. Out of the 5 wingers that I mentioned, a couple of them are going to fit. A couple of them are going to come through. So the key is Zacha, Wood, and McLeod on this team. Are they ready to step up? Is somebody going to take their spot? In the case of Gusev had a nice second half of the year. Could somebody take a spot now? Can they trade Gusev to get somebody? I mean, there's so many things the Devils can do. And Fitzgerald's new, Ruff is new, so you don't kind of know what they're thinking or what's going on. But do they have what it takes to make the playoffs if the right combination works? Oh, yeah, they do. They do. They have the cap space and everything that's going for them. So far, I like all the young people that are coming in. I'm not sure if Holtz can play this year. That's not to mention you have Mercer hanging around. And then you have the Russian guy with the long name. Don't even want to go through that. We're going to get to actually see him in the World Juniors. We're going to see a few players in the World Juniors. The Devils have, I think, 5 players on all different World Junior teams, so we're going to get to see that. So we're going to see if any of these kids are ready to go. But this is going to be a very, very interesting year. And the Devils, toward the end of last year, a lot of it was Mackenzie Blackwood standing on his head. But you got to think, when Taylor Hall left the team and Sims left the team, traded, whatever, the young guys were playing. They were actually played better without Hall. It's like I think they finally relaxed because the Hall saga was ended. And they got outplayed in some games because the defense wasn't that great, but they did score enough, and Blackwood played well. So Merkley looked like he played okay. Even McLeod got a little ice time, but nothing spectacular. Zaka stepped up his game a little bit, and he started to play a little better when that line was formed. But like I said, we don't know if that line's going to form. He also can kill penalties with Zajac. So now they're going to have to look for other penalty killers because now you lost Coleman. I know Palmieri can do it, but you don't really want Palmieri killing penalties. Yeah, at least I prefer him not to. I want him scoring goals and trying to give him a rest, but sometimes you can put him out there. And Heischer's the same way. You can put him out there and killing penalties, but Devil's always been tops in that, and you like to keep that. Those two pieces right there will do that. And Zajac can play in all positions, all circumstances. He's not gonna, and you guys know, he's not gonna score you 90 goals and 1,000 points or anything like that. But he does the job, and you need the players like this. So I find the Devils a pretty easy, pretty interesting team. But if they spend that last little bit of cap money right, and you go on the assumption is they have so many young players coming in, and somebody's going to step up and play that extra game and that extra good game, I think they're a playoff team. They play, and when you go by and look at some of the records, and I'm doing this out of memory, okay, and this is like a 61-year-old person type memory, they played okay against the Rangers. I think the series was like 2-2. They played okay against Pittsburgh. I think they were even 2-2 against Washington. They had trouble with Buffalo, and I think they were 1-1 versus Boston. So playing these teams head up, which in the conference that's going to happen a lot, with the better goaltending and the better defense, I think the Devils can hang with them. The key to them is not get off to a bad start. Because if something happens at any team that gets off to a bad start, they're done. Like, I think another interesting team is going to be the Kings, because they had a lot of young kids, and they started playing really well down the stretch. All of a sudden, maybe it's playing relaxed, not worrying about a playoff position, so you can go out there and kind of play your game. So that's going to be another interesting team. But there's a lot. I mean, you had Taylor Hall now is going to be in Buffalo. So does that really upgrade Buffalo that much? And the Bruins act like they might be down a little bit. They lost Krug. They're not sure if Chara is playing, and I don't think people realize how big it is to have Chara playing on your basically your third pairing, your second pairing, Chara. I mean, and then they lost Krug, so their defense, unless they make a move, of course, somewhere down the line, is probably going to drop off just a little bit. And then they have injury problems with, I think, Marchand and Bergeron. So they have to be very careful coming out of the gate and see. But I don't want to go through all the teams. We're just talking about the Devils here. So we'll see. But I think just the fact that the Devils have so many young kids, there's no way they're all going to flop. That just mathematically is not possible. Somebody or buddies will say at least 2 people need to step up. Gusev needs to keep running his numbers the way it was, and the key is Jack Hughes has to find a line mate. And if he finds a line mate, if he had a little bit more luck last year, he would have scored a few more points. So I don't worry about it. I mean, I remember one time he had a double poster. You just couldn't get no luck. And then some of the times he made nice passes, and especially to Simmons at the time, and he didn't have good luck earlier in the year neither. So we'll see how it goes. I think the Devils are going to be fine. I wouldn't just count them as a total rebuilding team, like I hear a lot of people saying. They also got, and this guy, I think his name is Servich. He's in a Russian league. He's tearing it up in the KHL, scoring a lot of goals. I mean, they just have so many people in this organization that are young and good. And that's not to mention trades can be involved in it, too, to get the right pieces to come over. So the Devils are going to be interesting, and I'm surprised I haven't heard more, but I think Devils are not going to do a lot until the last week. They probably want to start camp. They haven't played in like 9 months or something like that, so they probably want to start camp, see what condition everyone's in, see who's ready to go, see who's not ready to go. I'll be anxious and ready and waiting for camp just to see how it is. The way it's looking, it'll probably be like just after Christmas.